Absolutely, that's a good question. Accountability has to be paramount when we're talking about public servants and public employees. I believe national searches will be required. However, we have to make sure that people are not just passing through using these city appointments as a resume builder. A lot of times I've been disappointed, particularly with the airport director. It seems as if that position has been kind of a pass through where individuals are coming to build their resume to go to somewhere else. We have to have individuals who know Shreveport, who are invested in Shreveport, but as we do the national search, it's okay to bring in an outside perspective if that warrants it, but they have to understand that this is about public service. This is not about us being served, or this is not the image of public service that we often see. What I tell folks is local government is the most important government that you can have. The closer you are to the kitchen table and the closer you are to the trash can being picked up, your role is just that important. We don't have Secret Service agents that we can hide behind. And so I believe holding quarterly accountability for department heads, making sure that they're meeting their goals that we've set out to do, making sure that they're out in their areas, talking with their employees and getting employee feedback. A lot of times the morale of city employees are down, and so we have to make sure that we are building a team spirit, and that's not to knock anyone who's leading a particular department right now, because I think some of the folks are doing a good job. I've worked with them in the previous administration, and so I think accountability has to be essential to what we're doing. Competence has to be essential. You have to have some level of background and experience to show that this is what you're doing. Some of the water bill situation that we've gotten into comes from inexperience, sort of on-the-job training, where individuals were sort of taken fast for a particular situation, may have meant well, but didn't quite have the competencies to know when they were walking into a quagmire.
Yes, I think that starts with the vision for that particular leader. I've studied some of the previous administrations, and it has not been as much turnover as I would have imagined once new mayors come in the race. And again, if you have a very clear vision on what you want the city to look like, and you start to do interviews with department heads and leaders and appointees, you need to make sure that they know that vision and that they can implement that vision, and that they'll do so in good faith. So that will be the initial approach, to do the interview and make sure they understand and can implement my vision. And when you do that, the second component, you have to set up benchmarks and guidelines. For instance, appointees to the MPC right now, I will ensure, their number one rule would be facilitate business, don't obstruct business. And if you talk to business owners who work with the MPC, the story that you hear a majority of the time is that they obstruct, they were in the way, they weren't facilitating the growth of that business. So that would be my number one guideline for that. And obviously it would differ depending on what department I was, interviewing that department head with.
There would be a number of ways to evaluate people. And one way in particular that I use in particular is to ask the people that you are supervising, or that if you're director of public works, so ask your employees, how are you doing? They're the ones that can better gauge as to whether or not you are doing a good job. And what we need to do, what my strength is, I believe, is that I can recognize talent. You can't do this whole thing by yourself. You need to be able to bring in people that know their work, that are subject matter experts, and you need to be able to identify these type people and work with these people. People need to be given the latitude to make decisions. We need to be able to say, sit around this room, hash out an issue, be able to speak freely as to what the problem may be as you see it, without fear of repercussion. Okay, but after we make that decision collectively in this room, then I think that direction should be followed. So that's my approach to it.
Another great question. Being someone who has managed upper level managers, most of my life, the very first thing I want to ask them is, who do you work for? Because I will probably the first day is replace the police chief. The next 2 weeks are going to be evaluating every one of our department heads. And when they come in, I want to ask, who do you work for? If they tell me the city, you may not have a job in the next 5 minutes. If you tell me the taxpayers, then you've got an opportunity to stay here. And maybe if they're watching, that they may know what to say. But the next thing I'm going to do is, what did you accomplish last year for our taxpayers? I want to know that. What do you do on a daily basis? How many people do you have working for you? Do you have supervisors? Yes, I have 5. How many people do you have? Well, I have about 75. Another thing that would be a knockout for me, I want to know you have 74. Actually, we're going to have 75 today because we're hiring someone. That's what I want to know. Do you know your department? Do you know what you're doing? Are you holding people accountable to do their job? We have to make sure that we get the best. I've gone out to other companies and I've helped them. You can all day long, you can go out and we can hire A, B, and C, D players, right? A is the top of the line. If we go out and we hire C players or D players, that's all we're ever going to get. We're not going to be able to get to the top like we need. If we go out there, I'm okay with hiring B players, and I can teach, train, and develop that individual to make sure that they can perform. I might go in there and I might find someone who's been failing miserably, but maybe they have the want to, the will to, and I can teach those individuals to do what they need to do. I'm okay with keeping them. But if I have somebody that's doing anything that they feel like they're doing a great job and I see they're not, then that's a replacement.
When someone takes over the helm, the immediate, I guess, hall whispers is who's saying who's going. Oh my gosh, they're just going to whack us all. Not so. In my experience, is that what a good leader does is evaluate. And I was just talking to somebody the other day about, if you're the head of a department, one of the things is that, first of all, I want to know exactly what your job description is as you understand it. Obviously, there's expectations. If those expectations are being met, how so? If they're not being met, why? To say you're going to go in and actually, let me back up here. You have to have the opportunity to evaluate everyone, and that is with every department, with every position. My evaluation process is at any time during the last administration, were you ever hampered or bridled from doing the job that you were hired to do? Because it's all about, I say, fairness, but I really want to know if you were not and things are not going well, then we can move to the next level. If things are not doing well and you tell me that, look, I was hired to do X, but under the current administration, I was not allowed to do my job. So it is about fairness again. Just because you take over the helm doesn't mean you're changing out the crew. Now, there will be other opportunities for me to do that. And again, I know what I don't know. And so I'm a firm believer in, no one is as wise as, basically it's surrounding myself with people smarter than I am that can help me evaluate, those key positions. I have members that I've been kind of chit-chatting about, city attorney-wise or CAO-wise or airport. I mean, there are so many facets within the city government that we don't have time to go into each and every one of them. But the point is that just because, like I say, just because you have a new captain doesn't mean, the entire crew's going. It really is about evaluation and making sure that they were allowed to do the job that they were assigned to do, or their expectations were met.
Well, and let me say what I've started doing since I've been there, and I'll continue to look at how to tweak that. We have about 28 to 30 different commissions, so it's impossible for me to evaluate them, honestly, and then be the mayor and do all the stuff that a mayor has to do. But what I do now, when I make appointments, I sit with every person and we screen every individual for every commission or every board that I appoint. And in that screening, we take a look at what the purpose of every commission or every board is. And then we look at the background because we ask for a vita or a resume of every individual. And we want to know, first of all, do they care about serving? And why did they want to do it on that board? I don't go out and recruit them. We usually put feelers out and say, we have an opening on, the port. We have an opening with home mortgage. Do we have any interested people from this arena? And people will come, or people want to be reappointed. But I vet every individual, and we follow up. I have a governmental affairs assistant that follows up with the individual boards to see how they're operating. I did find several boards that were not really active. And so we've gotten to a point where we had to say either we need to see if this board is valuable to us, and if it's not, and then we beginning to bring some of those to council to say these boards are no longer necessary. Some of them have been in place 40 years and there is no longer a need for them. But I vet everyone, and then when it's time for us to reappoint, or when it's time for us to look for other people, we do that, and then we follow to see if they're making a difference. And so that's how I've started doing it. Now, a lot of the reappointments have said to me, mayors don't usually sit down and talk to us about the position, but I feel like that's my responsibility if I'm going to appoint them. Some of the individuals that come, and I need to say this, we have to get nominations from different agencies. For an example, the chamber. You have to submit to me 3 names that you would like. You and the chamber and other boards. And so I get to pick from the 3 people. And Civil Service Board, I don't get to pick for the fire and police. They get to really vote on who they want, and I simply appoint. And so I don't have the authority as mayor to sometimes appoint people that maybe I want to appoint, because I'm limited in what the law says. But I do vet every single person except for the fire and police. They get to choose who they want.